south of the border, down Mexico way. That's where I fell in love when the stars above came out to play. And now as I wander, my thoughts ever stray. South of the border, down Mexico way. She was a picture in old Spanish lace. Just for a tender while I kissed the smile upon her face, 'cause it was fiesta and we were so gay. South of the border, Mexico way. Then she sighed as she whispered mañana, never dreaming that we were parting. And I lied as I whispered mañana, 'cause our tomorrow never came. South of the border, I jumped back one day. There in a veil of white, by the candlelight, she knelt to pray. But the mission bells told me, ding dong, that I mustn't stay. South of the border, down Mexico way.
What do you think will happen in U.S.-Taiwan relations?
But the United States will and should continue to provide defensive weapons for Taiwan. But the level of assistance should be directly related to the offensive threat. On the Chinese side, looking at Peking, it is important then, if they want the level of arms to Taiwan reduced, they must reduce the threat. And the United States should continue to insist, as we did in the Shanghai Communique in 1972, and this also is the line in all other statements between the two countries, that the issue between Peking and Taipei be settled peacefully. I do not see any solution working out in the near future, perhaps some sort of a Commonwealth status in which Taiwan retains its economic and social character, as Hong Kong, of course, must as well. Maybe that will happen. I'm not prepared to say. But at the present time, we should keep the issue where it is. Taiwan is in no danger. It will continue to have its own economic system and continue to prosper. And I think that as long as we do not provoke Peking by either our statements or our actions in providing more than is needed for defense to Taiwan, Peking, they'll huff and puff, but they will do nothing.
Do you think there's a danger that a Democratic or a liberal Republican president would withdraw our support from Taiwan, and what would the impact of that be?
Well, there is the danger, but it would be a very great mistake. A great mistake because if we in effect say to Peking, look here, we're withdrawing all our support, we're breaking our economic relations, which is what we really have at the present time, primarily, and whatever military support that we're giving, it would simply encourage Peking to move on Taiwan, to move on it, recognizing that they would have no problem as far as we're concerned. No, that's not the thing to do. I don't think it's going to happen for that reason.
As spring began to bloom in Washington, D.C., President Nixon took the time to have an impromptu conversation with two of his close aides. H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman were known by Nixon staffers as the Berlin Wall because of their German-sounding names and their penchant for isolating Nixon from anyone who wanted to see him. The only problem was, this little off-the-cuff conversation was being recorded by the secret White House taping system, and President Nixon's thoughts, as well as those of Haldeman and Ehrlichman, would soon become a part of presidential history.
And the Mexicans are either.
Well, they've got a
They're all
heritage.
At the present time, they have a heritage, but at the present time, they steal. They're dishonest. They do a lot of other things. They do have some concept of family life, at least. They don't live like a bunch of dogs, which the Negroes do live like.
The Mexican American is not as good as the Mexican.
Oh,
And you go down into real Mexico, and they're clean, and they're honest. As he said, they're moral.
you know why in Mexico?
It depends which Mexicans you get in Mexico, too.
But I'm speaking generally. I mean, you can go into the slums. You can go into those.
There is a certain morality in Mexico. There's still
Because of the church.
Maybe.
No, I don't know as it is. No,
Family?
There is a belief, there's the family thing. Sure, they have their house of prostitution, borders and rest. But Mexico is a much more moral country than
Yeah, you get into Guadalajara or Monterrey, Cuernavaca, those places, and you go into an area where there is, a slum area. And by golly, they come out with clean shirts on Sunday morning, and the kids are clean. And
That's right. One of the good things the church is not destroyed. The church, at least, did have it shapen up, and frankly, you'll find a hell of a lot less marijuana used in Mexico than you find used in the United States.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Gosh, how times have changed since Nixon was president, right? How times have changed. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Interdimensional Lizard saying, I had no idea that Nixon spoke this way. Well, here on Moose Heaven, we like to share the inner thoughts of Richard Nixon. I find them hilarious myself. But welcome, everybody. Richard Nixon's head in a jar could be doing better work than the clowns that we have running the show these days. And speaking of clowns, thank you to TrippyCast, who had me on his stream earlier tonight. We shot the shit about all kinds of dumb crap. But I had a good time. And I think a couple of you came over, so let me say hello to a few people. Hello, See No Evil, TrippyCast. Thanks for having me. Starving Autist, Jaw411, Uncle Guns, Batfink, Corey Flockster Show, Interdimensional Lizard, Batfang, James Camp PC. Welcome, guys, welcome, because tonight, we're sitting at the grown-ups table. We're sitting at the grown-ups table again. We had our fun over on Trippy's stream, but now we've digested our turkey, and we're trying to figure out what Uncle Henry Kissinger is saying. We're sitting at the grown-ups table tonight, and I know that we are the few, the proud, that can sit here at the grown-ups table, that we have the maturity to talk about these issues. I know that the rest of the internet sounds like this.
They're remaking Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. You can't do that. And now they're making Ghostbusters with only women. What's going on?
I know that that's probably what's going on most of the channels on YouTube right now. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to sit at the grown-ups table and talk about, childish Latino jokes and all sorts of things like that. Look, we try to be respectful to other people's cultures around here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
Look, also, might I add, if you enjoy what you see, then let me direct you over to buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. We got a lot of things to get through tonight, so I don't have time to shill. But it's appreciated. Completely voluntary, of your own volition. Buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We got a lot of things on our plates. We've got new Mexican lady president to talk about. We've got tariffs on electric vehicles and people crossing the border. We got all sorts of things to talk about. We got militarized agricultural reform that you should be totally worried about. Lots and lots of things to dive into. So I won't waste too much of your time because I know. We're sitting at the grown-ups table and most of the internet sounds like this.
They're remaking Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. You can't do that. And now they're making Ghostbusters with only women. What's going on?
What's going on? I know, but we're not here to talk about such things. We're here to talk about...
Let's say China. China.
China.
China.
China.
China.
China.
China. China. China.
China.
You go over to China. 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 You take China.
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 And Mexico, you know.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
I mean, not to generalize or anything, but look, we're sitting at the grown-ups table. We gotta be adults here, and I gotta turn the music down a little bit, don't I? It's a little hot. What's up, everybody? All right, let's get started. Let's get started, shall we? In case you weren't already aware, Mexico's got a new lady president. The first lady president in Mexico, and not just that, a Jewish lady president. Jews in Mexico, you say, spirit. Incredulous, unbelievable. Well, to paraphrase Ye, why was it called Jews in Mexico? 'Cause Jews was in Mexico. Yeah. For a long time, since before America was a country, Jews was in Mexico. Not some big rattled conspiracy theory, and guess who do you have to blame for that? Or thank, depending on how you want to see it. But who's responsible for Jews in Mexico? This guy. Because you all know the poem that you learned in school, right? The poem that goes something like, in 1492, Spain expelled the Sephardic Jews. What? That's not how it goes? Well, it's true. In 1492, Spain expelled the Jews. And so they were forced to convert to Catholicism or leave. And it just so happened that some guy had some boats that were going over to a new land. And before you say spirit, I detest your anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Don't look at me. Don't look at me, it's not my theory. These are Sephardic Jewish scholars that say that Columbus was Jewish and that his crew was mostly Sephardic Jews. I'm not hypothesizing this. Do you know where I took this clip from? I took this clip from a history of the Jewish people in the Steven Spielberg Library. Enjoy.
What is the Jewish link to the discovery of America? There is speculation that Christopher Columbus may have been Jewish. The astronomical charts that he used on his historic voyage were prepared by Abraham Zacuto, a Jew. It is also known that members of his crew were Jewish. In the same year that Columbus left Spain for the New World, as many as 160,000 Jews were expelled from Spain. In 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain decreed that Spanish Jews convert to Catholicism or leave the country within 4 months. This expulsion brought an abrupt end to the troubled yet illustrious history of Spanish Jewry. The Jews of Spain knew both times of religious tolerance and times of cruel persecution. During the Spanish Inquisition, no less than 13,000 Jews were condemned to death. But Spain also offered a period of enlightenment for Spanish Jewry. In the 8th century, Arabs occupied most of Spain and welcomed the Jews. Traditional Jewish thought meshed with contemporary Arabic culture, and in the 10th and 11th centuries, a period which became known as the Golden Age, Jewish culture reached unprecedented heights. Columbus sailed to the New World while the Jews of Spain scattered to foreign lands: Africa, Asia, Holland, England, Turkey, Greece, and Palestine. The influence of Spanish Jewry is visible in today's Israel. Busy streets bear the names of poets, philosophers, and scholars whose writings we continue to study. These streets were once filled with the sounds of Ladino. Much like the European Jews who so treasured the Yiddish language, wherever Sephardic Jews went, they took with them Ladino, the Spanish language of their ancestors. Ladino is one of the many languages from the Jewish diaspora aired on Israeli radio. Spanish Jews and Christopher Columbus were both destined to leave Spain in 1492. And now, almost 500 years later, Israeli Jews broadcast in the ancient language of Columbus, Spain.
So why was it called Jews in Mexico? Because Jews was in Mexico. Did she say Jewry? Yes, that's the proper word. That's the proper term for Jewish things. Jewry. The Jewish people, collectively. Jewry. Yeah. It's not a pejorative. That's the proper term for it. So whether or not you believe me that Christopher Columbus was a Sephardic Jew, nevertheless, even if he wasn't, Christopher Columbus brought over Louis de Torres, who was the first Jew in the New World. Born as Yosef ben Halevi Halvri, he was forced to convert to Christianity or be put to death by the Inquisition, and came over with Columbus. So no matter how you cut it, Jews was in Mexico before America was ever a country. So with that out of the way, Mexico elected their first female Jewish president.
This morning, Mexico electing the first woman president and first Jewish president in its 200-year history. Claudia Sheinbaum, a close ally of Mexico's current president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, declaring victory overnight. The election also happening across the U.S., with 20 Mexican consulates allowing voters to cast ballots.
As a young adult, it is really exciting to come vote for my own country.
In Mexico, some voters waiting hours at polling locations.
I think it's a necessary change, and it's a good sign of progress as a society.
Sheinbaum is an academic who shared a Nobel Peace Prize for her work on climate change. And it's the growing power and violence of criminal organizations that are expected to be her greatest challenge. Hundreds have been killed at campaign events, including dozens of candidates. Mexico's drug cartels and gangs are thought to be behind the attacks.
20 years ago, Mexican drug cartels were just shipping drugs to the U.S. Now they are doing businesses locally and extorting people and government, so they need to have a political base, and elections are the opportunity to increase the control.
Criminal organizations are also profiting from the smuggling of migrants to the U.S., with thousands arriving daily through Mexico's southern border. The immigration crisis, a major issue for U.S. voters this November, and Sheinbaum will become America's crucial partner to avoid another surge at the border.
But for the U.S., it's about two things: trade and immigration. Officials here will watch closely to see if Mexico reduces its flow of migrants, with a likely member of her cabinet suggesting Mexico needs to do a better job of controlling its southern border.
Mexico, probably more than any other country, can either undermine or strengthen the U.S.'s border and migration policy.
Sheinbaum may also take a harder stance on human trafficking and the drug cartels than her predecessor, whose hugs not bullets policy pushed homicides near record levels. Sheinbaum has the mandate to do it, getting almost 60% of the vote, twice the support of her nearest competitor.
I see a Mexico with a lot of pain and violence. I wished her that she can solve the great problems of our people.
Sheinbaum also becomes the first Mexican president of Jewish descent. descent. Her grandparents were immigrants from Eastern Europe. In Los Angeles, William Lajeunesse, Fox 32, Chicago.
So, is Scheinbaum gonna help clean up the border crisis? And what's with these 37 opponents being killed by the cartels? Wow, that's, you know what we say around here.
Weird.
Nah, but that's not all that's weird. You see, there is something that Scheinbaum has been suspiciously silent about. That being the Israeli-Gaza war. You see, one might naively assume that because she is of Jewish heritage that she would therefore, of course, support Israel. Of course. However, her openness as a socialist and receiving Nobel Peace Prize for climate change scientist puts me under the suspicion that she also might be in the back pocket of who?
Let's say China.
Let's say that. For argument's sake, let's say that. That seems to line up socialist, climate change, which would also, as her being a leftist, line up with her being more of a ceasefire gal. So it's very strange, very weird.
Weird.
That Scheinbaum's made no comments about the Gaza war one way or the other. She has not condemned it, nor endorsed Israel. Weird, especially since there are pro-Palestinian protests going on right now in Mexico.
Para limpiar el lente. Que necesita el trapo con agua para limpiar el lente. Sí está, híjole, ay. Vale, sí. Vale, sí.
Pretty strange that she's made no comments one way or the other when this is going on in the country that she just took over.
I'm out here at the Israeli embassy in Mexico City because I'm outraged by months and months of death and destruction and murder of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And my heart has been especially broken into a million pieces by what's happening in Rafah.
Palestina vencerá, a romper relación con Israel. Espera pagará. Los palestinos que asesinaste no morirán, no morirán.
Porque el día de hoy es un día negro. Las últimas horas
You can't say that. That's
nos han
racist.
traído es esta idea de que la barbarie puede llegar al mundo, de que no hay lugar seguro.
But spirit, you say? She's clearly walking the political line. She doesn't want to make a statement one way or the other, and that That's pretty clear. That's pretty clear to me. Doesn't want to lose support from either side. She ain't saying nothing about nothing. Makes sense to me. But where does she really stand? Where does she really stand? It's not like she got congratulations from China on her victory. It's not like China warmly congratulated Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum on her election as Latin America's first woman president. No. We have another saying around here.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
And somebody is trusting China. At least that's what I think. But then again, I'm also the person who's telling you, look, these Mexicans, let's be real here. You can't trust them because at the end of the day, they're just gonna sneak up behind you and yell yeehaw really loud.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
That's how they do things, okay? And if you don't believe me, let's see what else Claudia Sheinbaum is inheriting from her predecessor, because it's not like she's inheriting a socialist paramilitary or anything. It's not like they might sneak up behind you and say yeehaw really loud.
3, 2, 1. Yeah!
Look, I'm just reporting on the news. Why is Mexico militarizing?
They can be seen everywhere, in airports, patrolling beaches and parks, in rural areas and city streets.
Mexico's military is now the largest and most powerful it's ever been.
During the presidency of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, over 100 different functions of civilian governments or civilian authorities were transferred to the armed forces.
What we are having in Mexico is a strong process of militarization of the public life. The armed forces, they are playing a stronger role, not only in matters related to security, but also in infrastructure, building trains, airports.
The massive amounts of public funds going into these projects is wholly controlled by the armed forces. But as the new government takes over, citizens are wondering if these infrastructure works are coming at the expense of public safety.
What we are having now is the worst rate of murders in our history.
Widely known as AMLO, President López Obrador's tenure has seen record high homicides, something he has addressed in confusing terms.
No hay más violencia. Hay más homicidios.
So why is the military building trains and airports? And what does that mean for the country's security?
We are on the Maya train, a 900-mile railway that carves through the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico's southeast. This is arguably López Obrador's most ambitious infrastructure project. About a third of it is being built by the military. In fact, more than half of the Defense Ministry's budget for 2024 will be spent in building the train.
El problema es que al militarizar el tramo, no sabemos si hubo vicios ocultos. ¿Quién revisa al ejército? Esa es la pregunta.
So who's going to build all of this agricultural reform? Who's going to build this socialist infrastructure? The military. And who oversees the military?
The Mexican military is composed of three key forces: the Army, the Navy, and the National Guard, founded by AMLO in 2019. The National Guard is a force that President López Obrador created to replace the federal police, which he considered too corrupt to function. The gutting of the federal police was initially welcomed by some.
When we set up the National Guard in 2019, we came in an agreement. The National Guard is a civil body, not a military one.
But then in 2022, President López Obrador moved it to the Defense Ministry, essentially making it a military institution. In 2023, the Mexican Supreme Court declared the move unconstitutional and said that it should be reversed. But in practice, the National Guard still responds to the Defense Ministry.
By transferring them these new functions that belong to civilian authorities, we're actively violating the Constitution and we're actively undermining the rule of law.
López Obrador views the military as the most trustworthy, least corrupt, and most efficient institution to carry out the large infrastructure works that he views as his legacy.
Se habla de que pues ya en todo está el ejército y la marina. No es militarizar el país, es apoyarnos en dos instituciones que son pilares del Estado mexicano.
Some data does reflect popular opinion of the military to be good. About 71% of Mexicans say they trust the Army and the Navy. That's more than the government or the police.
López Obrador is kind of pragmatic leader. He don't like no as an answer. And the soldier is being trained to answer yes, sir. That is the kind of answer he's looking for. Well, we're having something that we didn't have in the past. Now we have a business military elite in Mexico.
Since López Obrador came to power...
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So now they have what one might call a military-industrial complex in Mexico, whereas they did not before. I seem to remember a certain U.S. president on his way out saying something about beware the military-industrial complex? Well, half a century later, Mexico's developing their own military-industrial agricultural complex. Wild. And it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there.
2018, the combined budgets of the armed forces grew by 150%. Compared to the federal police that AMLO disbanded, the National Guard has almost tripled the membership. Yet, it's detaining fewer people and seizing less drugs and weapons.
We thought the National Guard will fight federal crimes, narco-traffic, organized crime, kidnapping. The rates and the effectivity of the National Guard is so low. We are talking about 50,000 disappearances during the López Obrador administration. Considering the modern history in Mexico, those are the worst numbers. We used to have a kind of state relationship between the armed forces and the government. Now what we are having is a political relationship which is really dangerous for our democracy.
The armed forces are, by definition, armed corporations that can use the legitimate violence of the state against any enemy that they define, and having them performing these many functions increases the risks of human rights violations, arbitrary detentions.
La Guardia Nacional costó 5 años, muchos recursos, tenemos que fortalecerla y tenemos que consolidarla. Falta todavía mucho por hacer, pero la ventaja es que hoy ya tenemos una institución que creo que va a dar muy buenos resultados, sobre todo en el futuro muy cercano.
President López Obrador, in a very smart move, changed the constitution to force the next president to actually keep on using the armed forces and the military on public security matters until 2028. And that's going to be very difficult to reverse.
Mexico's next president will have to reckon with what López Obrador created: a richer, mightier, and larger military that's more deeply ingrained in private business and government than it's ever been.
So Claudia Sheinbaum gets to inherit her predecessor's paramilitary that's clearly overlapping with the drug cartels in their power. So I want to address something, and I want to take that pin out that Shrapnel pointed out earlier. Spirit, why bother researching the JFK assassination? Who cares? It was 180 dickety 2 years ago. What are you gonna find out that hasn't already been discovered? This is an example of why we study JFK. Because if you've been paying attention, you know for a fact it's not make-believe. It was a thing that The mafia and the CIA and wealthy American industrialists all came together to form their own little paramilitary army to go invade Cuba. And if that happened, I'm here to tell you that you don't think that Mexico and China and the drug cartels won't do the same goddamn thing to America? You don't think they won't make a little baby army?
Meanwhile, Fox's Bill Melugin encountered a large group of mostly male migrants from all across the world yesterday at the California border. Watch this.
Where are you guys from? What country?
Pakistan.
Pakistan.
India.
India. Where you from?
Turkey.
Turkey?
Yeah.
Turkey. Okay.
India.
India. Where are you guys from?
Turkey.
Turkey. Turkey. Where are you guys from?
China.
China.
Ecuador.
Ecuador? Where are you guys from?
India.
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 Iran.
Iran.
You're all
Iran.
from Iran. Why'd you come?
No freedom.
No
freedom. No freedom.
No freedom?
Yes, in Iran. Iran is a dangerous country.
But I want to get your take on who specifically, whether it's the government or the administration, who specifically is working on probing all of these military-aged men who are coming into the country. Do you have any idea who's actually looking at how many people who are military-aged men who are coming into the country, whether it's the Chinese nationals or Jordanians or anybody else? Yesterday, Bill Melugin ran into one citizen who started collecting all of the passports that the illegals are dropping on the floor. They don't want to have ID on them when they get apprehended, so they drop their passports on the floor in California and Texas, and this one resident's picking them all up, and he's got a pretty clear idea of who's coming into the country. Watch this.
They're just dropping this stuff on the ground to come here and assume a new identity. So that's a little bit scary. With my military background and seeing the people that are coming across, that male, 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 these are all military-aged males. People keep saying that. I've got the proof right here.
So there you go. The passports are right there. They're largely military-aged men, many from communist China. A lot of people worried that Xi Jinping is creating a little baby army here in America. Who's watching that?
Yeah, I was able to ask Secretary Blinken that yesterday when he came before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he spent so much time talking about Ukraine, you would think the United States is in Europe, but I asked him about our own hemisphere and our own border and the Remain in Mexico policy, what we're doing to target the cartels and collect intelligence. He assured the committee that he is collecting intelligence, and at the end of the day, the Director of National Intelligence is responsible for that. We know that the Department of Homeland Security isn't focused properly. That's why Mayorkas should have been impeached, and the Senate should have taken up the impeachment the House sent over. So we shouldn't have confidence that this administration is doing it the right way, but we know that it's supposed to be done.
Well, I mean, you're on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. What is your role on the House Foreign Affairs Committee? I mean, what are we going to do at some point? Turn around and say, oh wow, we've got 1 million people, military-aged men, and now they're up in arms and they are creating discontent in America. Are we just going to say, oh wow, look at all these Chinese military-aged men that are in the country? They're like a little baby army. Wow, we missed that. I mean, what are we doing about this?
It turns out nothing. Nothing at all. And I think, personally, that this concept of a little baby army is ridiculous. Why would they make a little baby army when they have military-aged males? Why would they make a baby army? That serves no purpose. So I don't think they're making a baby army. I think they're making a military-aged male army. Because remind me again, who's coming over the border? Who's making a run for the border? Remind me again.
Tonight, among the unprecedented number of migrants illegally crossing into the U.S. from Mexico, a dramatic surge in people from China. We're on the border east of San Diego. This is a group that crossed a few minutes ago. Border Patrol just directed them to the open-air detention site. They tell us they're fleeing poverty and political repression, including the aftermath of COVID. Why did you leave China?
Freedom.
Freedom. Just like that other guy said. That's weird. It's almost like they're teaching these people to say that. It's almost like they're coaching them. When you're asked by a reporter, why did you come here? Freedom. Oh, freedom. Yeah, that's weird.
Weird.
We are here for freedom. Almost like they're being coached. Weird.
Was there something specific that happened?
Yes. COVID-19. My work is gone.
What did you used to do?
Engineer, electronic engineer.
3 years ago, 689 Chinese migrants crossed the southern border. Last year, that number soared to over 37,000, part of an explosion of migrants coming here from all over the globe. Currently, most migrants are released into the U.S. to wait often years for asylum hearings. Critics say that encourages migrants to come, and President Biden should change course through executive action. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas telling us he's working with China, which currently refuses to take back Chinese migrants who are deported from the U.S.
Well, that may be changing. We have been working with the People's Republic of China to actually receive individuals whom we have determined are not eligible to remain in the United States.
And do you expect that to change soon?
We are hopeful that it will.
Back on the border, we meet this father and son who say their journey was facilitated by a Chinese smuggler they call a snakehead.
The snakehead would contact him through WeChat and give him directions on where to go and where to stay.
How did you pay this person?
Everything was done online.
We obtained exclusive private messages from one snakehead who claims to have brought more than 100 people to the U.S. this year.
Bienvenido.
On social media, he posts these proof-of-life videos of Chinese clients traveling toward the border with help from Mexican smugglers. They serve as ads for his concierge service. Ticket price, $10,000 a head. Once they set foot on American soil, the smugglers' work is done, with many more customers ready to go.
A long line of Chinese migrants make their way to the U.S. through its border with Mexico. They've arrived after a treacherous journey through a route in Panama that has become increasingly popular.
我很开心我来到了美国，这是我梦想中最喜欢的国家。我们一路上面一路过来，都是爬山涉水，什么东西都做过了。
These migrants first flew to Ecuador, where Chinese nationals can enter visa-free. They then cross into Panama and make the dangerous trek through the Darien Gap jungle. The route, which is often patrolled by armed bandits, has become known to migrants through social media. These migrants say they fled political repression and economic hardship. Panamanian officials say more than 15,000 Chinese migrants crossed the Darien Gap in the first 9 months of 2023. They made up the fourth largest group among all migrants who have taken the route. For weeks, they have been filling these makeshift camps in the California desert, where they wait to turn themselves into U.S. authorities and make their asylum claims.
Turn themselves in.
It's completely shocking to see all of these people here crossing from Central Asia, from China, from Turkey, from all over the world. When we're used to seeing border crossers here, Central Americans, Mexicans, trying to avoid the border patrol. And here we have this giant mass of Asians coming in saying, please, and they make this, please arrest me. Where's the guy who's gonna arrest me? It's very unusual for this area.
Very unusual. You know what we say? You know what we say? It's all very...
Weird.
Yeah, very. And James Campisi says, remember the improvised biolab they had found in California that had 10 Chinese nationalists tied to it 6 months ago? I do remember that. It's not like they're building a baby army of military-aged males. No. And look. Not to be that guy, but you let these people in and you want evidence of what they're gonna do to your country and your national and religious symbols. Just look what they've been doing. They do this all the time in Japan. All the time.
Төнгөн шингэн дээрээ хийгэж бодсон бүхнийгээ хийж тусахчаад гэр бүл мүлтэй болох зам руу зүтлээ хүүхэд чухал та байсан бэ надад даа байсан бол итгэн гэр бүл мүлтэй бол гэж заах байсан бэ би бол том толгой
Point is, all the time, these Chinese tourists be pissing on Shinto shrines in Japan, taking a dump and going China #1 all the time. But we're sitting at the grown-ups table tonight. Enough of this pee-pee humor, right? I know the rest of the internet sounds like this.
They're remaking Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. You can't do that. And now they're making Ghostbusters with only women. What's going on?
But we're sitting at the grown-up table, so we're going to talk about grown-up stuff tonight, and we're going to talk about a very important question. Why are American automakers failing in China? Why are American automakers failing in China?
Just 4 decades ago, private car ownership was unheard of in China.
For most people in a country where private cars still don't exist, the journey to work is still by flying pigeon bicycle.
And there was almost no auto industry in the country. But now it is the largest auto market in the world by far. Some of the biggest beneficiaries of this meteoric rise were foreign automakers, including American ones. They made piles of money. But the good times have come to an end, and their future in the country is seriously threatened.
Detroit is under pressure in China, and that for the same reasons they're losing in China, they could very easily lose globally.
Lured by the promise of access to a burgeoning market of, at the time, more than 1 billion people, global automakers agreed to strict trade rules and taught inexperienced Chinese partners a lot about making cars.
For a long time, it was worth it. Foreign companies enjoyed prestige and popularity, but Chinese firms caught up fast, to the point that foreign firms are now being pushed out. The new market isn't quite like the state-owned industry one might imagine. Many top firms are privately owned. There are fewer restrictions. It's highly competitive. New models can come to market in a fraction of the time it takes automakers elsewhere in the world, and always at lower prices. Increasingly, Chinese consumers prefer to buy Chinese brands, and the CEOs who run these companies have close and direct relationships with their customers. At its height, from 2014 to 2018, General Motors made $2 billion a year from its China operations and joint ventures. In 2017, the company sold 4 million cars in the country, about 500,000 more than it sold in North America. The Buick brand especially saw incredible success in China. About 80% of Buick's global sales were in the country, 5 times as many as in America.
GM used to be the poster child for an awesome US-China relationship. At one point, the CEO from GM China told me, here in China, we're making more money than God. Things are great. Chinese people love our Buicks. We're bringing Cadillac soon. And it looked like there was going to be a forever annuity for the big three, GM, Ford, and Jeep in China.
But that didn't go as planned. A quick look at the market share of international auto manufacturers in China illustrates how rapidly things have changed. GM's sales in China have fallen from that high watermark consistently since 2017. In 2023, they fell to 2.1 million, lower than their US sales for the first time since 2009. Equity income from the country, GM's metric for how much it earns in its second largest market, fell 34% in 2023 to $446 million. It fell 54% during the fourth quarter alone.
Things have been downhill and accelerating downhill, so much so that GM sales are down by more than 50%, Ford's down by more than 60%, and Jeep has actually gone bankrupt in China and had to get out. So in the last 5-6 years, we've seen just a disastrous, outcome for the Detroit Three.
Government support, of course, played a crucial role. The country knew it needed some kind of edge on incumbents. It bet big on EVs, spending an estimated 200 billion yuan, which comes out to about 27 billion American dollars. BYD received over $3.6 billion in direct subsidies between 2018 and 2022, most of it in that last year. Partly this was to combat China's intolerable air quality problems. Decades of industrial development had left cities like Beijing with some of the worst air pollution in the world. But the decision was also economic.
The Chinese felt that they had a hard time competing with the Western and especially Japanese companies with internal combustion engines because then it would be hard to catch up. So they decided they would leapfrog and go into electric vehicles. And this is an area in which nobody was proficient.
Strengths go beyond batteries and motors. Chinese firms have become quite strong in software and infotainment systems, a benefit of the country's rise in the mobile phone and electronics industries.
Volkswagen, for example, had big problems with the software trying to hold together its EVs, and they've looked to China to help solve that. And I think that's a really important part of the story that you don't hear much about.
Recent entrants with backgrounds in the technology industry include Li Auto, Xpeng, NIO, Xiaomi, Huawei, Baidu, Tencent, and Alibaba.
They're a little bit like Tesla. They're new, they don't have the burden of history, they don't have old factories or not so many old factories to reconfigure, and they have a very fast pace of development.
These companies view the car as a technology platform for the distribution of services and the continual collection of service revenue, rather than a thing that is simply sold once and then forgotten. The concept of the car as a rolling smartphone or computer is already normal.
In China, the concept of a car as a rolling smartphone is already normal. And more and more and more, that is something that worldwide there's a market for. And China's filling that market, and the US auto industry isn't.
China's younger buyer base prefers the highly connected products Chinese firms are selling.
They now are often saying that the Americans and the Europeans produce cars that have inferior software and don't use the latest chip and are not as much on the cutting edge.
So China's making these rolling smartphone cars, but is there even a market for these things? Sounds like a good deal, right? Environmentally friendly electric vehicles that are cheap, affordable, have the newest technology. What could go wrong, right? Now, obviously, this is impacting the American auto industry, but could China be posed to take over as the leading manufacturer of vehicles? And is there even a market for these fucking things?
From clothes to toys to electronics, the Made in China label has flooded the U.S. market. Could the auto industry be next? The Biden administration has announced a 100% tariff on electric vehicles imported from Beijing this week, trying to protect American manufacturers. Former President Trump says he'd raise tariffs even higher. But the threat might be overblown if U.S. automakers step up their game. It's the Barron's cover story this week, and associate editor Al Root joins the panel. Al, great story. I learned a lot of stuff. Let's start with, I really did, the Alliance for American Manufacturers says Chinese EVs, quote, could end up being an extinction-level event for U.S. automakers. What's driving all this concern?
Listen, a $10,000 car, it just isn't the threat that you think it is. Now, BYD is a real competitor. There's lots of things that are reasons people are afraid. China's the largest market for new cars now. It's the largest maker of electric vehicles. BYD made 3 million electrified cars last year. In the fourth quarter, they actually sold more cars, all electric cars, than Tesla. So there's lots of reasons that you should be afraid. But we can get to the $10,000 car in a second. There's no Chinese branded car sold in America right now. There's no Chinese capacity on this continent except a small joint venture plant in Mexico. The Chinese will export cars. They're going to start in Europe, and they also ship cars to Southeast Asia and places like that. The threat for the U.S. is literally a decade away, and that makes these tariffs to some extent politically motivated, and you can even see that in this sort of back and forth of I can raise tariffs higher than you.
Alrighty.
So, right, let me speak briefly on that. You know and I know that Biden's doing all of this tariff raising and putting executive orders on the border. Orders on the border. The orders on the border is just a political move to do what you know and I know, because that's kids' table talk. You know and I know that shit he should have done way back when. It's what Trump would have done. I'm not gonna get into that. You know it, I know it. But I just wanted to address that in the chat, that you're right. You're absolutely right. But what if I was to tell you that there's more to this, but you have to hold on, because good things come to those who are patient. This has more to do with more than just electric vehicles. More than just electric vehicles, and we'll get to that. Where am I going with this? Spirit, where are you going with this? What I'm talking about is national defense.
So let me explain it to you this way. National defense is like totally cranking. I mean, it is just awesome to the max. I mean, like, it is primo, radical, bitchin' trip.
Okay, national defense. What do electric vehicles have to do with national defense. And why is Mexico building a baby army? How are we going to tie these things together? You'll find out. Keep hanging in there. Good things come to those who are patient. But let's go back to talking about these bullshit EV cars.
We saw the yellow car, that's called the Seagull. You said it looks like a Minion from behind. I'm not rushing to the dealership for one of those, but I could see a recent grad, a $10,000 electric vehicle. Hey, that sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, and it's not that nobody likes a good deal. And it's not that, but the thing about the Seagull, it's just not magic. General Motors can make cheap cars too. They have a $5,000 EV in China. The market sort of decides the kind of cars that you purchase. And, you know, those college students, you know, the cheapest 10 cars in the U.S., they garnered about 6% of the market in 2023. That's the market for the cheapest cars. And then the kind of market that you're in, whether it's China or India, Mexico or here, that sort of sets the price of the cheapest cars. You know, like you're not going to run out and buy the Seagull because Americans tend not to want stripped down cheap cars. You know, it is always a nice headline. We use the Yugo analogy in the story. You know, it was a $4,000 car, and it seems great, but then service is a problem, reliability is a problem. It's actually very expensive to get it fixed. Remember, the upfront cost is only one portion of the equation there.
Which U.S. auto company would you say is the most at risk right now?
Clearly, it's Tesla. And you know, if you go back to that, the Japanese. Tesla is the General Motors of electric vehicles. It has about 50% market share in the U.S. When General Motors first saw those Toyota cars coming into their market, they had about 50% market share. So Tesla has the most to lose. It's clear as day. And they need to do the same thing, right? They basically have two popular models, the 3 and the Y. And they basically said, we're selling so many cars, I don't need a small car. And then BYD comes along, growth collapses for Tesla, and now they're trying to accelerate their small car. They need a full product lineup that people want.
And we should say briefly that while China could slap tariffs on Tesla, they're a little bit less vulnerable because they actually build things in China.
Yeah, it's more about general business climate for American businesses in China. And, you know, Americans and Chinese aren't getting along so well, so that's the risk.
That is true. Thanks, Al.
What if I told you, D-Rec, you're partially right. You're partially right. I imagine a little baby army with little baby guns rolling in on Power Wheels. What if I told you that you're onto something and you're partially right? What if I told you you're onto something? Bum, bum, bum. But instead of little Power Wheels, what if they're little power tractors? Little power tractors. Hang in there. I'm going somewhere with this. I like taking news stories that you think are all unrelated, making a narrative, forging a theory. Where am I going with this? Well, as he said, where is the market going to be for these electric vehicles? Who's going to be the main purchaser? Where are these vehicles going to be assembled and exported to? I wonder.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
They're going crazy with the electric car, costing us a fortune. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing a car that nobody wants and nobody's ever going to buy.
He's not wrong on the purchasing. He's not. Of the 4 million vehicles purchased, you know, 269,000 electric vehicles were sold in the U.S. market. It's up like 2%.
All right. The bottom line is, Senator Kramer, is that when you get pushback, when the Bidens get pushback from the mainstream media, they know they're in trouble, right?
Well, that's for sure. And the mainstream media knows what we all know, and that is there's not a demand. In fact, their hope of a demand has obviously fallen flat. And the idea that somehow you can create demand by creating more supply, of course, only somebody who didn't take Economics 101 would fall for that. The reality is, in fact, when they try to subsidize any type of a product, all you do is you add that much. The amount of the subsidy gets added to the price of, in this case, the vehicle. So you really never create a true market going that route. But what you do is create a glut of the product itself. And at the end of the day, people are very comfortable with their gas vehicles and their combustion engines because they're reliable and they know how to work on them. There's all kinds of benefits to.
And there are politicians and bureaucrats. When they spend our money, they don't do it as effectively as we do or as the market does in deciding what works and what doesn't. Isn't it that simple? I mean, just one other example is this $7.5 billion that has been spent sending up these charging stations all over the country. They only have 7 or 8 of them. 7 or 8. $7.5 billion. That doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up very well, that's for sure. And the goal was, the promise by Joe Biden was there'd be 500,000 of these charging stations. And you sort of touched on that point when you talk about Chicago and the fact that the batteries don't last long. In fact, when the temperature gets below 20 degrees below zero, they lose 40% of their battery life. And if you live someplace where it doesn't get 20 below, try North Dakota. It's fairly common for it to get to 20 below zero. So that leaves probably half of our country out of the market for an electric vehicle.
And that's the problem with these piece of shit electric vehicles, is that they may be cheap initially, but half of the fucking country can't run them because the batteries won't work because it's too cold. And then when you add up the cost of all the bullshit that you have to fix and all of the parts you have to fucking assemble because they're pieces of shit, then you sink a lot of money into this. So the point is that they're not cost effective. They may seem cheap and affordable, but they're not. There's a hidden fee, as they say. But there's another thing that we say around here. An ancient proverb of sorts goes like this.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
And the other thing, David, is it's largely wealthy people that do buy electric vehicles because they live in places and they can afford to have an extra car. They like the idea of an electric vehicle, but that doesn't even begin to talk about the fact that we don't have the electric generation and transmission that can support more of this demand for electricity. And it gets right back to the fundamental point of the market. The market is simply not there. There's not a demand for it. And you're seeing that, not just in the United States, by the way, but around the world, you're seeing the same phenomenon.
Well, they can't create markets, but they can destroy them. They're trying to, addition to pushing, with all of the subsidies that taxpayers are paying for, they are also creating new regulations that are very tough on gas-powered cars. Is it conceivable that they could force it? They're doing the same thing in states, by the way, with regard to natural gas ovens. We have all these new regs for ovens that make it almost impossible to have gas ovens now, even though, if you have an electric oven, hey, somebody's got to pay for that extra electricity. Of course, electricity also has to be created somehow, and it's not always able to be created by sun when it's cloudy or by wind when there's no wind.
Well, and gas furnaces. We just had a congressional review vote last week on gas furnaces. To get a gas furnace that's 95%, and this is, by the way, gets to your point about regulation, a 95% efficient gas furnace ends up costing about $4,500 to $5,000 for a new furnace, which 60% of the furnaces in the country would have to be replaced. Or you can get an electric furnace, which is cheap, but then the cost of the fuel is double. There is no rationale for any of this stuff in the free market system.
And it leads to such distortions. It leads to distortions, not only market, but foreign policy distortions. I mean, now because of our foreign policy considerations, we're letting the Iranians produce a lot more oil than they were under the Donald Trump administration, and we're buying more oil from Venezuela. They produce it in a much dirtier fashion than we do. So if you want a clean environment, you produce it here, where we have the regs to make sure it is a clean environment.
You're saying that this has influence on our foreign policy? And I'm saying...
So let me explain it to you this way. National defense is like totally cranking. I mean, it is just awesome to the max. I mean, it is primo, radical, bitchin' trip.
And you're telling me that China is forcing a market for these electrical vehicles where there really isn't one? You're telling me that they're forcing a market? I wonder where they're forcing this market for electrical vehicles. I wonder where China might have its eye on investing in. I wonder.
4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
This model from China's BYD, the largest electric vehicle maker in the world, was launched in Mexico. BYD America's CEO Stella Li said the company aims to help every Mexican bring their first electric car home. BYD hopes to reach that goal by building a car factory that employs 6,000 local workers in Mexico. BYD is just one of thousands of Chinese companies that have flocked to the country in recent years, with investments in the market jumping nearly 600% from 2019 to 2022. Chinese car brands like Chang'an, JAC, and Geely account for 20% of Mexico's EV market share. Other expanding sectors include e-commerce, with consumers across Mexico now able to go online to access Chinese giants like Shein, Pinduoduo, and Alibaba, which owns the South China Morning Post. In December 2023, a China-Mexico air cargo route opened, connecting Shenzhen to Mexico City. Mexico is seeing what is being called a gold rush of investment from China, but the shift is not being welcomed by many in Mexico's neighbor, the United States.
The auto industry is being assassinated. They're going to be closing up and they're going to be building those cars in China and other places. Much of it's gone to Mexico.
When you make tactics like these, you're not competing, just cheating.
美方指责中方采取所谓非市场行为，是典型的贼喊捉贼，倒打一耙。
As the mudslinging continues, Chinese companies have been seeking new ways to reach the U.S. market, with an eye on America's southern neighbor. Why is China investing in Mexico? The U.S.-China trade war started in 2018, when former U.S. President Donald Trump slapped more than $300 billion of import tariffs on Chinese goods.
This is the first of many. This is number one, but this is the first of many. This has been long in the making. You've heard many, many speeches by me and talks by me and interviews where I talk about unfair trade practices. But we have one particular problem, and that's China.
The following year saw even higher tariffs placed on more goods from China bound for the U.S. And the latest escalation came on May 14, 2024, when the Biden administration announced even higher tariffs aimed squarely at China's EVs.
We're not going to let China flood our market, making it impossible for American auto manufacturers to compete fairly. 100% tariff on electric vehicles made in China.
For years, Chinese companies have
I like how they actually put subtitles under Biden. That was actually helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
In China.
For years, Chinese companies have sought another way out, which came through the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement.
Under the USMCA rules, most goods products can enter the U.S. with no tariffs. The Chinese, they saw this as an opportunity to avoid the tariffs imposed by the U.S. government by producing them, making them in Mexico, and then from Mexico exporting to the U.S.
Mexico welcomed foreign investment with open arms, incentivizing Chinese companies with tax breaks and free land grants. Many firms took up the offer.
Free land grants, you say? For nearshoring? For China exporting materials to Mexico to assemble them in Mexico to export them to America for purchase? What? And what are they doing with those land again? Oh yeah, something about a militarized agricultural reform. Are you starting to see what I'm spelling out here? Is it starting to dawn on you that this is about more than electric cars? And we haven't even got to the tractors yet. The tractor is a whole, the tractor's gonna be a meme, trust me. You're gonna wanna stick around for the tractor. But are you seeing that there's more to this than electric vehicles? Have you heard of the Belt and Road Initiative? Did you know that the Belt and Road Initiative is reaching out into Latin America? More on that later, but back to these hideous, godforsaken electric vehicles.
To what has been called nearshoring, or the practice of transferring a business operation to a nearby country, especially in preference to a more distant one.
the U.S.-China trade benefited Mexico a lot because Mexico became a key destination for the so-called nearshoring, where products that meet certain rules of origin may enter the U.S. market with zero tariffs.
Mexican states like Nuevo León saw over 2,000 new company registrations in 2022 alone.
But when they were there, they would complain about the fact that the factory was so far away from everything that they would find very difficult to eat. Mexican cuisine, it's very different from Chinese cuisine. And they were complaining a lot about this, and most of them didn't know how to cook. So
these people are complaining that they don't have Chinese food in Mexico. What I'm trying to say is,
don't trust China. China is asshole.
What they did, they hired a woman from Mexico to cook the Chinese food, but she didn't know how to do it. And of course, she doesn't speak English or Chinese, but she was willing to learn. So the Chinese employees, they were the ones teaching her. God knows how, with sign language, trying to communicate.
Companies have started to hire hybrid, local, and Chinese management teams to facilitate workplace cooperation, hold cultural exchange events, and train fresh graduates to introduce them early to Chinese work culture.
Wow. So integrating Chinese and Latin American cultures, you say, integrating them into the workplace. Mexico and China strengthen their agricultural cooperation. The Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and the Embassy of China in Mexico have announced that the strengthening of their cooperation in agricultural matters, particularly in sugarcane cultivation in southeast region of Mexico. This collaborative effort will involve the establishment of an experimental field. An experimental field, you say, for mechanized sugarcane production. Wow! An experimental field for mechanized sugarcane production. Mexico and China strengthening their agricultural cooperation with experimental mechanized sugarcane production. I think there's more to this. What are they doing according to the PRC, what's going on in the agricultural sector in the People's Republic of China? Well, China is turning to driverless tractors and combines to overhaul agriculture. China's turning to driverless tractors and combines to overhaul agriculture. Driverless tractors. The future is now, guys. And guess where those tractors are going? Take a guess. I'll give you a countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
That's right. Exports of tractors to Mexico are through the roof. Exports of tractors to Mexico. Why would China be exporting tractors to Mexico? That's weird.
Weird.
I think there's more to this. Mexico and China are strengthening their agricultural cooperation with driverless tractors that are being exported en masse to Mexico. Well, first of all, there's something that we need to discuss when it comes to China and the tractor. There's a lot to unpack, apparently, when it comes to tractors in China. And when you see it, it all makes sense. It's about agricultural reform. It's about mechanization of agricultural reform. And the image of the tractor is often used in the People's Republic of China in communist propaganda. The tractor is a symbol of the revolution of agricultural reform through mechanization. Don't believe me? You think I'm just making all of this shit up? No, let's talk about tractor girls. From the early 1950s on, the female tractor driver was one of the most frequently seen symbols of the Chinese socialist modernity. Known as the model workers, and the female kind first, they were part of the group of the first, the women to be trained in work involving heavy machinery, and Liang Jun, one of China's first female tractor drivers, was introduced to the Chinese audiences in 1953 in posters, anthologies, and school texts, and she even appeared on the 1 yen banknote issued in 1962. Liang Jun, the first female tractor driver in communist China who became a folk hero and model worker, depicted on the 1 yuan banknote of China's bank. Don't believe me? This one's called Accelerate the Implementation of Agricultural Mechanization. Commie gobbledygook. In the many autobiographical materials devoted to these new women, a pattern emerges. First, that the female body needed to be strengthened in order to physically up to this new type of work that bore no semblance to the labor more traditionally associated to women. And secondly, once the workings of the equipment were mastered, a symbiotic relationship that emerged between the body and the machinery. By not giving in to physical discomfort, women liberated themselves from historical and familial economic oppression. Feminist tractors. Obviously, the location of the new women in propaganda posters was in working class and in close proximity of the equipment. She was no longer a mere country girl, but had become a woman worker. By taking part in training and mastering machinery, she represented the group of the new productive members of society that had been proletariized and had been broken out of the confines of domestic work by tractors, struggling to speed up the realization of mechanized agriculture. Although these first women were largely undifferentiated in physical appearance from the idealized male body of the period, the qualifier female rarely failed to appear in the slogan, thus reminding the reader that women could and should assume such proportions in occupations. Equally important, however, was the message that socialism demanded such reshaped bodies to increase the speed of agricultural mechanization to struggle for the modernization of agriculture. Commie gobbledygook. And the images made a number of things clear. A woman should take part in production, whether in the factory or in agriculture, and in doing so, she should not be excluded from operating machinery. Moreover, they firmly placed the women in the proletariat. And finally, they indicated that the leadership position should be open to women as men, and in reality, as in practice. However, this largely remained utopian. Tractors have always been a form of Maoist communist propaganda for the mechanization of the industrialization of the proletariat of agriculture. And it still is. Tractors are Chinese communist propaganda.
Only by stepping into the mud can we know the power of the earth. Only when rooted in the earth can we know the responsibility endowed by the nature.
By the nature.
Zhou Kiar Agricultural Equipment Company Limited is developing synchronously with global agriculture to provide reliable and efficient equipment for agricultural scale operation is the mission of KR people. In the name of agriculture, establish a biography for the times.
In the name of agriculture, establish a biography for the times. I can't spell it out for you more clearly more clearly and more incoherently. In the name of agriculture, establish a biography for the times. Tractors, fucking tractors, and you goddamn know that with every tractor exported to Mexico, they got a little red Mao book with it, because this is more than just about tractors, my friends. This is all more than tractors. It's more than just about tractors. This is about mechanization of agrarian reform. And how are we going to achieve mechanization of the proletization of mechanization of agriculturalization of reform? How? With 5G hydrogen-powered self-driving tractors.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
That's how we're gonna seize the means of agricultural reform, is with 5G hydrogen-powered self-driving tractors.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
That piece of shit is a self-driving tractor, supposedly. Sound too good to be true? Sound too good to be true? Well, they're exporting a ton of these self-driving tractors. It's part of the cooperation of China and Mexico in their agrarian reform that they're carrying out with their militarized socialist paramilitary that's coordinated with the drug cartels. Have you been following? Are you seeing where this is going? Tractors, fucking tractors. Fucking tractors, my friends. And at this point, I have to say, look, this isn't me. All credit to another channel. I'm gonna give them the credit. I hope they don't mind me using their video. They seem like pretty cool, chill dudes, and you should go subscribe to them. I'm gonna give them a shout out. They're called China Fact Chasers, and I'm gonna use one of their videos. I hope you enjoy this because this is fucking hilarious. If that tractor seems like a giant piece of shit. If you're looking at this 5G hydrogen self-driving tractor and thinking,
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
well, guess what? There's more. So I'm gonna turn it over to these guys because this is fucking hilarious. So enjoy, guys.
This is brilliant.
This needs context because
yes,
this, I think people laugh at this, they'll clown on this for what it is, but it is an analogy for everything in the CCP.
They will put things out there and just expect people to believe them and not question it.
Yeah.
So last week, we showed you, was it last week or the week before?
It was a while ago.
We showed you this hydrogen-powered tractor.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about this. Let's just show you a little intro here. This, by the way, is CGTN tech reporter
as well,
Zhou Yiqiu.
Yeah.
Okay.
But more importantly, this is state media showing off their high-tech development.
Yes, okay, so let's take a look.
A tractor driven by hydrogen fuel cells, and that is autonomous.
Wait,
yeah,
hold on a second.
And that is autonomous.
And that is autonomous.
That's kind of like saying and that's awesome.
Yeah,
right?
and that's
But
fantastic.
I think she got the inflection wrong.
Because it's supposed to be an autonomous tractor that is hydrogen fueled. Anyway,
people in the chat are remembering the tractor.
Yeah, so you remember the tractor, right?
You need to
you'll
grab
see.
something.
Yeah, so
you wouldn't believe what we and the subreddit found.
Yes, actually, you guys, our community is incredible.
Yes.
So we all know, you might know her as Miss Wow, but she is CGTN's reporter. So she's a state reporter.
Yeah, state media.
Zhou Yiqiu.
Government employee.
Yeah. So just in case there was any doubt about that.
We're not picking on some social media star.
No. We have to show you that she is state media. She does all these things about poverty alleviation, vaccine, this and that, but she does it from a tech point of view, showing off China's 5G. AI helps COVID-19, this and that.
It's soft power.
Yeah.
That's why it's in soft power hour.
That's correct. Now, she put out a report about this hydrogen-powered tractor.
Pause that? Let's just look at that. I want to say abortion, but it's not born yet because it's not real.
No. We showed you last time that they even had a Transformers logo on the front. And this is supposed to be a fully autonomous hydrogen-powered tractor. Okay, you can actually see, by the way, the one all the way down there, you can see the Transformers Decepticon badge on the front.
You know what? It's very apt because they're deceiving the world.
Yes, it's a Deceptor tractor.
Yeah.
Okay, so what goes on with this thing is it's supposed to talk to satellites with 5G technology. It's supposed to be able to go out there and do all this stuff autonomously, you see?
Yeah. So then you don't have to go till the ground and breathe the horrible pollution.
Yeah. And remember, this was supposed to be one of China's top 10 tech innovations, or top 5 or something.
Top 5, and then she showed 3.
Yeah. Remember, we found out afterwards that John Deere has been making something along these lines that actually works and is big.
And
it's
for a while.
Yeah, very long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, now the important part of this is during this presentation, they showed this. Now, take a look at this. This is their CG representation of this hydrogen-powered tractor.
State media. This is the top Chinese government putting this out.
Please pay attention. This is supposed to be the technical insides of this tractor. Look at it. It looks high-tech. You're like, wow, that looks incredible. Look at that. What's that?
Wow.
They're highlighting this gizmo. Look at that.
What's that?
This is, and she goes on to say how it's hydrogen powered. So I just want us to see that CG little tractor again, right? Okay, let's take a look.
Very important.
Because this is Chinese state media showing us this, okay? Yeah. So now you know it's real. This is the CG they show you. Okay, look inside. This is what it looks like. Wow, high tech, it's amazing. It links up to satellites and all that. If you watch the rest of this, it shows look how it links up to satellites and stuff. Guess what? One of our subscribers on the subreddit is actually, works in 3D animation, okay? And we had actually mentioned, did they just get some kind of assets? And he went and he found a $7 asset pack online, okay, for 3D objects. Because that's how it works. You buy your 3D objects, which you can use then in your 3D animations, okay?
Yeah.
So he found this, and look what he found. Ooh, what's that? What is that?
Oh, no. China.
What could that be? That looks like part of the tractor.
Someone's getting fired.
Then they're like, ooh, what's that? That looks like the middle part of this hydrogen-powered tractor.
Oh, I actually feel secondhand embarrassment. It makes me feel bad.
And then they're like, look, oh, wow, that looks familiar. So, and look at that. That looks familiar too.
Oh my.
So this guy, by the way, fantastic.
Yes.
Posted on the subreddit. Do we have his? We got to put his name up.
I don't think he wanted me to show.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, even if he doesn't, you can go find on our subreddit.
Yeah.
So what he did was he's like, okay, he's going to make himself a hydrogen-powered vehicle for China. Let's take a look. Let's see what it looks like.
Let's see what it looks like, guys.
This is his hydrogen-powered.
Let's see it.
There it is. Because it doesn't matter what shell you put around it.
Yeah, of course.
It's not real. Now, for you guys that don't understand, those 3D assets that they show of how the tractor is actually made have nothing to do with the actual shell that's being driven around.
Yeah, that's
but you can
just
imagine.
nonsense. Yeah.
Now you can almost guarantee this tractor is not 5G. No. This tractor is definitely not hydrogen powered.
Nope.
This tractor is probably a crappy little electric motor with someone's radio controlling it in the background.
Well, yeah, and it's probably something that exists on the market already that they just put like a plastic shell over. Because this looks exactly like the diagram that they made, except with an actual cow. And this is the asset pack, which I'm guessing they probably pirated anyway.
Probably.
But it only costs $7, and you can buy this and then put together your own Chinese hydrogen tractor.
I think that what people have to understand is you have to understand that this was put out for Westerners.
Yes.
This is for English speakers. No, not just Westerners, English speakers, Indians too, right?
Yeah.
Westerners and English speakers to look at China's soft power and say, wow, look at this development. We actually saw some pro-CCP subreddits.
Yeah, they were like, wow, I can't wait.
I wish we had this in America.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is incredible. Look at this technology. And it's like, dude, the state government from one of the most powerful countries in the world are using their propaganda arm to potentially steal assets from 3D render
or just buy it for $7.
Yeah, for $7, and then go and lie and fabricate something in some like uncle's backyard.
Yes.
In China that doesn't do what it says. For what?
Yeah.
For what?
To prove China's like high tech.
And it seems maybe kind of funny, but it's a great analogy. You can imagine what else they're faking.
Yeah.
And it's almost nearly everything.
Everything. Take a look. Again, we'll put side by side. In the top corner, we have China's official state media's, model.
They basically use a video game pack.
Yeah, in the bottom corner, you have our subscriber's model that he created. That's it. It's the same bloody thing. It's exactly the same thing. Okay? It's embarrassing is what it is.
It's very embarrassing.
I mean, again, this is everything about China.
Yeah.
When you see them doing their military parades, look how fierce we are, and they show their, fancy put together things about the army doing all this stuff and the military doing all this stuff. It's like the tractor.
Yeah.
It just has to look good.
It's like the tractor. It just has to look good. It's an analogy for everything. That's why I clipped that. I love it. The tractor. It doesn't have to be functional. It just has to look good. Look good.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Also, shout out to Big B Trucker who bought a coffee. Thank you very much. He didn't leave a message, but he bought a coffee, and I appreciate it. Thank you. And you can buy a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. Support something that's not fake Chinese tractors, because this is what China and Mexico. Okay, let's break this down, shall we? This piece of shit is what the China-Mexico Agrarian Reform Alliance is based on. The China-Mexico Agrarian Reform Alliance is based on this piece of shit tractor that was designed by PRC Media with a $7 STL pack. And that's what's at the heart of this agrarian reform that's going to be carried out by Mexico's military, which is backed by the drug cartels and overseen by their new socialist president. Are you following? Are you seeing the threads that are unraveling as we pull on this tractor thing? This is wild shit, and nobody's talking about this, and I'm telling you there's more, there's more, there's more. This has to do with national defense and our foreign policy. Let me explain it this way.
So let me explain it to you this way. National defense is like totally cranking. I mean, it is just awesome to the max. I mean, like, it is primo, radical, bitchin' trip.
Yeah, we have another saying around here.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
And you shouldn't trust people that are gonna fake pandas. That's right. Have you ever heard of the fake panda conspiracy? It's not a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. They be faking pandas over in China.
They may be unbearably adorable, but they aren't actually bears at all. The latest exhibit at this zoo in eastern China had visitors doing a double take. These pandas are really chow chow puppies, advertised as panda dogs, and social media can't get enough of them.
Look quickly, and there's a resemblance to the rare giant panda. Sort of.
But some zoogoers in China aren't happy about what they call a deception. According to Chinese state media, the zoo said it dyed the dogs black and white because they didn't have any pandas. A worker insisted visitors are not being misled and that the fuzzy chow chows are accurately described as dogs. A spokesperson for the zoo tells media outlet Jam Press, people also dye their hair. Natural dye can be used on dogs if they have long fur. But
we didn't have any pandas, so we dyed some dogs to look like pandas, and people are totally not being misled. No. But I want to get back to this tractor thing and agrarian reform. Excuse me, I had to mute and cough. There's something that I want to talk about. You see, if you follow my stream, you know that I'm a little bit of a neo-Nixonian. And I think Uncle Kissinger deserves, a reevaluation. Something that Uncle Henry said is that if you want to deal with China, you have to understand China. You have to understand their thousands of years of history and culture, and where they're coming from, what they're all about. If you want to deal with China, you have to understand China. So, with that in mind, I'm going to make an assertion. This is my realpolitik Kissinger-esque assertion of this relationship of agrarian reform between China and Mexico. I think it's less about tractors and environmentally friendly electric vehicles and agrarian reform. I don't think it's about any of those things. I don't think it's about any of those things. I think it's about sweeping away cow demons and snake spirits. I think it's about sweeping away cow demons and snake spirits. What the fuck are you talking about, Spirit? I think it's about obliterating all ox demons and snake spirits, sweeping away all of the past, the old ideas, the old culture, the old customs, the old habits, which have poisoned the people's minds, sweeping them away for a revolution of the proletariat in the name of a cultural revolution. I'm talking about sweeping away all cow demons and snake spirits for a cultural revolution. All the old ideas, the old cultures, the old customs, the old habits, the enemies of the revolution, the cow demons and the snake spirits. I'm saying that all of this agrarian reform and these 5G tractors that are totally make-believe is less about environmental vehicles and agrarian reform. It's more about cow demons and snake spirits, the enemies of the Cultural Revolution. And I'm telling you that Mexico has a lot of cow demons and snake spirits. Literally. Quetzalcoatl. Do you see where I'm going with this? If you don't think Catholicism and the fact that a majority Catholic country just elected, quote unquote, their first Jewish women socialist president, that isn't a form of sweeping away cow demons and snake spirits. Sweeping away the old customs and the old ideas, the old traditions. For a revolution of the proletariat, for mechanization of agricultural reform. Commie gobbledygook. So with that in mind, if China is trying to sweep away the cow demons and snake spirits from Latin America, what do they have to gain? What do they have to gain from this deal with the devil? What does China have to profit? Cui bono?
Take a look at this picture. This is the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro meeting with President Xi Jinping of China in September 2023. In the last 10 years, they've had at least 5 different meetings to discuss politics, diplomacy, and economic ties. These trips saw ties between the two countries grow even stronger to an all-weather strategic partnership. But Venezuela is just one of the many Latin American countries that China is courting. Even though thousands of kilometers separate them, China became Latin America and the Caribbean's second largest trading partner in 2021, with almost $450 billion worth of goods exchanging hands, up from $12 billion in 2000, almost a 40-fold increase. So why is China so interested in the region, and does this flourishing trade come at a cost? Since China's accession into the World Trade Organization in 2001, external trade has flourished, and the country has built up a notable presence in key industries crucial to Latin America, such as mining, telecoms, electricity, and energy. China's economic relationship with Latin America takes on 3 forms: trade, official foreign direct investment, and bilateral loans. Why do you think Latin America is such an attractive investment proposition for China?
It's many of the same reasons that had driven Chinese engagement with Latin America really even 2 decades ago. Market-seeking behavior as China looks to export a much wider range of goods, now of much higher value, technological goods, for example, and services. In addition to that, there's resource-seeking activity. Trade in commodities in particular has underpinned the relationship for again, over 2 decades. And in Latin America, China's looking for soy, above all, to address what is a fairly critical food security challenge at home. The region also plays an important role in China's broader energy security calculations, and that's one reason why we see China continuing to engage with Venezuela despite the many challenges there.
Soy! It's about soy. It's about soy to feed a lot of hungry people in, I don't know.
Let's say China. China. You go over to China. China. You take China. China. I love them. China.
A lot of hungry mouths to feed over there in China. And you need a lot of soybeans. Where are you gonna get them? Latin America, that's where. So we give you bullshit electric vehicles, you give us food, we give you communism. You give us a proxy army. You see where all this is going? I hope that this isn't just me talking into the void. I hope I'm making some sense to some people. So why is China investing in Latin America?
China also invests directly in key sectors through investments, mergers, and acquisitions. Between 2005 and 2020, it invested more than $130 billion in the region, including $60 billion in Brazil, $27 billion in each of Peru and Chile, while Argentina received $12 billion of Chinese ODI.
From 2000 to 2010, most Chinese investment in Latin America went into the extractive industries, into mining and oil in South America mostly. The Belt and Road Initiative starts in 2013, and what you start seeing is a lot of loans from Chinese policy banks to governments in the region that are used to hire Chinese contractors to develop infrastructure.
The Belt and Road Initiative is a vast infrastructure and development project with the original purpose of connecting East Asia to Europe. The project has since expanded to Africa and all the way to Latin America. In 2022, Argentina signed a Memorandum of Understanding with China, which means that 21 out of the 33 Latin American and Caribbean countries have formally signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative. This changed the nature of investments in the region. Before 2013, more than half of Chinese overseas investments were in the basic material and energy sectors. Since then, these investments have diversified to include consumer goods, financial services, industrial goods, telecommunication services, and utilities.
Signing into the Belt and Road Initiative is a way of gaining diplomatic favor from China or being on the right side of things with China. Of course, this brings some controversy when it comes to the US and Europe.
Belt and Road Initiative did, however, spur investment into logistics and infrastructure. This includes strategic ports. The US State Department estimates that Chinese state-owned companies are involved in around 40 port infrastructure projects from Mexico all the way down to the southernmost tip of the continent in Ushuaia, Argentina. Along the Panama Canal, for example, which is one of the world's busiest waterways, Chinese company Hutchison manages and operates the ports of Balboa and Cristobal, located on both the Pacific and Atlantic sides of the canal. While Hutchison only operates the ports, Washington is increasingly uncomfortable with the Chinese presence, as around 60% of goods passing through are destined for the US. China's state-owned shipping company COSCO is also the majority owner of a new port project in Peru, the port of Chancay, which will offer a deep water port for container ships making the trip from South America to China. Beyond infrastructure projects, China has also poured money into politically sensitive areas such as ports and space. In 2018, for example, China started operating Espacio Lejano, a deep space ground station in a remote area in the Neuquén province of Argentina, consisting of a 35-meter diameter dish. The station's stated aim was peaceful space exploration. However, the facility is managed by an agency which reports into the Chinese military, and suspicions have grown that the base is being used to gather intelligence. It has little or no oversight by the Argentinian government. Critics therefore worry that China's interest in the station goes beyond commercial interest and could help facilitate China's military and civilian ambitions in space. This comes as it also looks to increase its footprint in key telecommunications sectors. Along with selling its tech to South American markets, China needs the continent's critical raw materials such as lithium, copper, and nickel, which are essential for making batteries that ultimately underpin the green energy transition. It is estimated that up to 60% of the world's lithium reserves are located in the Lithium Triangle, a region that includes Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. Lithium and copper-rich Chile is a good example of China's presence. Chinese mining firm Tianqi holds more than 20% of Chilean chemicals and mining firm SQM's shares, and China itself has been Chile's largest trading partner and export market since 2009. It doesn't stop there. China has been actively engaged in emergency financing to countries in financial distress, typically the purview of multilateral development banks such as the IMF and the World Bank. Since 2005, China's state-owned policy banks have lent $136 billion to the region and distributed 123 loans, notably to Brazil, Ecuador, and Venezuela. These loans typically carry lower interest rates than countries could access in public markets and are often accompanied by different conditions. For example, Chinese loans are sometimes granted to those that agree to hire Chinese infrastructure firms. The loans are also denominated in yuan, which serves the twin purpose of facilitating payment in China's local currency, while at the same time reducing the need for creditor countries to use US dollars. It also means that when countries run into trouble, as in the case of Bolivia and Ecuador, they are at the mercy of Chinese creditors.
Bolivia is at the mercy of Chinese creditors. Did you hear that? Did that come across? Bolivia is at the mercy of Chinese creditors. Well, let's let's explore a little something about Bolivia. Let's talk about foreign policy. Because remember, we're sitting at the grown-ups table. I know that most of the internet sounds like this.
They're remaking Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. You can't do that. And now they're making Ghostbusters with only women. What's going on?
What's going on is we're sitting at the grown-ups table and we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about Bolivia and their debts to communist China. And what's going on with Bolivia? Well, it turns out that Bolivia severed their diplomatic ties with Israel. And Chile and Colombia recalled all of their ambassadors. Now, you might say, well, Spirit, there's a lot of contentious things going on in the Middle East right now, and certain countries are taking certain stances, and I can see how they might withdraw and sever their diplomatic ties with Israel because they might have bombed a hospital or bombed an aid caravan or bombed some civilians in Rafah, right? This is in response to Israeli aggression that Bolivia severed their ties with Israel and that Chile and Colombia recalled their ambassadors, right? Oh, no. That happened on October 31st. It happened in response to the October 7th attacks. So Israel, mind you, gets attacked by a bunch of people who kill a bunch of people. They shoot a bunch of people, and Bolivia says, "Oh, shame on you, Israel. Shame on you, Israel, for getting attacked and having a bunch of people killed. Shame on you. You did this to yourself. We're severing ties with you." Bolivia decided to break diplomatic relations with the Israeli state in reputation and condemnation of the aggressive and disproportionate Israeli military offensive taking place on the Gaza Strip. In response to the October 7th attack, so that gives you some idea of where Latin America stands in the Middle East conflict and why China might be courting them and why China having a grip over the Latin countries with loans might influence their foreign policy in the Middle East away from Israel. I don't know. Just a theory, but let's explore another conflict. Let's explore another hot button current event. So, did you hear about the election in Taiwan? Did you hear what happened in Taiwan? Well, while everybody over here in the US of A is talking like
they're remaking Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford.
Yeah, we've heard it. Nobody's talking about what's happening in Taiwan. Nobody's talking about that. And it should trouble you. But it's completely separate and unrelated to all of this Mexican agricultural tractor reform that we're talking. No. It's all related. But first, what's going on in Taiwan?
In Taiwan, a delicate peace looks a little more fragile. The self-governed island has a new leader, one China sees as a reckless separatist. For 2 days, Beijing tried to show the world how it could and would wage and win a war here. This is Keelung, a naval base. The closest Beijing's aircraft got to Taiwan's coast was about 45 miles from here. Ki Ming-woo has seen decades of tension. To him, it feels like a farce.
Do you think conflict with China is a real possibility?
China is huge. Taiwan is just such a tiny place. One lake in China is 10 times bigger than Taiwan. Do you think this land is of any benefit to them?
But to Beijing, it is critical. Reunification inevitable. The latest drills, punishment for Taiwan talking about two separate countries. It is about more, though, than just vitriolic bluster.
There is definitely a sense here that if Beijing was to make a military move, it would be catastrophic. But there is also a kind of fatigue that seems to have set in, particularly among young people, a sort of collective roll of the eye every time the rhetorical cannons are fired.
Back in the harbour, everyone's looking elsewhere, trying to tune out of chat about China.
After so many years of military exercises, people have just become used to it, and they don't think China will actually attack.
I'm more worried about China influencing and infiltrating Taiwanese politics than I am about war.
But the US says Beijing may be on track to be ready to attack Taiwan by 2027. Do you think that Beijing is preparing for war?
Certainly, yes. China is preparing for war, based on the number of military ships and the hiring of new recruits. It's all for self-defense and Taiwan.
Conflict looks very costly and risky for Beijing right now, though. It may well opt to just squeeze this island rather than seize it. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Taipei, Taiwan.
Oh, so in just a few years, China will be ready to invade Taiwan. And by that time, they'll have a little baby army with baby guns and baby electric tractors rolling across the border. Do you see what I'm spelling out for you? I'm trying to go woo, 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 woo. This is about more than just tractors. It's about a lot more than just tractors. So tell me, Spirit, tell me in all of your infinite wisdom. Tell me in all of your infinite wisdom that you borrowed from a Fox News video. What would an invasion of Taiwan look like? What would that look like, and why should you be concerned about that and the baby armies?
Hudson Institute Senior Fellow, Atlas Organization founder and author of China's Vision of Victory, Jonathan D.T. Ward. Jonathan, is this a fresh sign of China's aggression towards Taiwan? Because have we really seen them do these types of drills in this serious of a fashion around the island of Taiwan?
Hi, Cheryl. Well, look, it's not a fresh thing in that sense. It's actually very similar to the drills that they performed after Nancy Pelosi's visit in summer of 2022. So in a way, it's sort of surprising we haven't seen anything of this scale since then. But here it is. I mean, they're doing this in part in response, or so they say, to the inauguration of the new Taiwanese president, William Lai. But bottom line, I mean, they've encircled the island. They're going around not just from in the Taiwan Strait on the western side, but around in the Philippine Sea on the eastern side of the island. And then the thing that they've done that they haven't done in the past is, while simultaneously encircling the island, they also are carrying out exercises around the offshore islands, Jinmen and Matsu, which were the centerpieces of Taiwan Straits crises in the Cold War era. So, you know, at this point, they're going pretty full bore on all the different flashpoints in the Taiwan Straits. And, you know, they're escalating their rhetoric as well. I mean, the foreign ministry, I mean, imagine this. It's the official spokesman of the foreign ministry said that Taiwan independence forces will be left with their heads broken and blood flowing after colliding against the trend of China achieving complete unification. So we're back to the Xi Jinping sort of rhetoric about breaking heads and bloody heads and these sort of, you know, horrible things that the party says. So, and meanwhile, Indo-Pacific Command has told us, I think, very clearly and very repeatedly that China is preparing to be capable of invading Taiwan, you know, executing a successful invasion by 2027. So that's now not too far off. I mean, they've built the force structure to do this. I mean, they've ramped up their military in quite a powerful way. Their, you know, relationship with Putin, I think, also enables them to have really a global approach to military aggression. And we need to get very busy supplying the Taiwanese with what they need. There's apparently a large backlog of missiles that they need. I mean, we have not apparently sent them the Harpoon missiles that they require, and just other kit that's necessary in the Pacific. So there's a lot of work to be done, and this flashpoint is only going to become more important.
Well, that rhetoric.
Oh, that's weird, because Nixon told me that nobody would ever turn their back on Taiwan. No president in their right mind, even a crazy liberal Democrat, would never do that. They would never withhold shipments of weapons to Taiwan, because that would mean a defenseless Taiwan, which China would invade, which would surely lead to World War III, right? Nobody in their right mind would do that. Nobody in their right mind would help China along. in their quest to invade Taiwan by 2027 once they've built up their little baby armies. But somebody who wishes to remain anonymous, they bought a coffee to help fight the baby armies. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to fighting the baby armies. You can help fight the baby armies at buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. Every dime goes towards fighting those babies. Hashtag fight those babies. Speaking of hashtags, tell me, Spirit, in your infinite wisdom from a video that you borrowed from Fox News Business, what is the role that TikTok is playing in all of this, you ask? TikTok.
TikTok? Well, I mean, TikTok is really a propaganda tool, principally in the United States. I mean, if you've got half of our population, the principal news source for Americans under 30, I mean, they're able to pump stuff that ultimately would be very pro-regime. I mean, you could imagine an attack on Taiwan and then TikTok and ByteDance blasting out a whole lot of information saying that Taiwan belongs to China or something like that. And, it's so I think that's more of a propaganda tool, but the Communist Party takes a pretty broad spectrum approach to strategy. I mean, they have quite a comprehensive approach to all of this. So I think we know at this point how TikTok fits into that. And, it's not really an economic tool so much as a propaganda and espionage tool.
Well, and
I think we all know how TikTok operates. It's a propaganda tool, and if you can blast out that Taiwan belongs to China, you can blast out that Israel belongs to Palestine. I'm just saying. Or you can blast out the Osama bin Laden manifesto. Totally organically. I'm just saying. And who owns TikTok again? Oh yeah.
Let's say China. China.
You know it, I know it. I don't need to spell it out for you. We all know how TikTok functions. It's a propaganda tool. Serving China, serving the PRC. So militarily, logistically, what would an invasion of Taiwan look like? And what would it mean for us? Why should we care? Oh, Spirit. Israel and Palestine, that's so Jews and Muslims. I'm not a Jew, I'm not a Muslim, so it doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to me. China, Taiwan, same difference. Don't matter to me. Respectfully, I'm telling you, it does matter. It does. You should care. If you have a national interest, remember what I said earlier. Or maybe I said it on Trippy Stream, but it bears repeating. That nations don't have friends, they have national interests. These aren't friends. Israel's not our friend. Taiwan's not our friend. They're national interests. Understand that. So, what would an invasion of Taiwan look like for us? Why should we care? Why does it matter to you, to me, to all of us? Why? Why does it matter? Who cares, right?
These striking images of Chinese warships off the coast of Taiwan this month, a dire warning of a potential invasion that could disrupt the global technology supply chain, plunge the world into an economic catastrophe, and start a hot war between the US and China. And according to one geopolitics expert, an actual invasion could be over before the US even has a chance to respond.
So a lot of people assume that this would be sort of a Normandy type of beach landing. The reality is the terrain does not allow it.
Dmitry Alperovich predicted the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and now in a new book, he lays out how China could seize Taiwan. First, he says, the Chinese would mount a lightning-fast assault from the air and the sea.
You're still going to move amphibious assault ships across the strait. Each of them can deliver about 800 troops and, more importantly, dozens of troop transport helicopters as well as gunships to do an airborne assault. They can reach the two airports within 10 to 15 minutes.
They can do that by parking them in international waters. And Taiwan would feel constrained from firing first because that would be seen as provoking a war.
You're going to have these transport ships, mostly civilian vessels, and have been loaded with hundreds of thousands of troops, armored vehicles, tanks, logistics that you need to occupy an island of 23 million people.
To cover the attackers, Alperovich says, China would strike Taiwan's defenses from afar.
You're going to have bombers launched from the mainland. You're going to have the largest cruise missile and ballistic missile and rocket forces in the world, pummeling fixed radar installations, pummeling naval facilities, pummeling communication nodes.
Then, he predicts, Chinese Marines in huge airboats would rush up the river leading to the center of the capital city, Taipei.
All of this can happen literally within the first 30 minutes of action.
All the while, he says, the U.S. president facing an awful choice. Allow the aggression to stand or launch a war that could kill more Americans than World War II. So why is Taiwan so vital to U.S. and global interests? One reason, Taiwan manufactures almost 70% of the world's semiconductors, those tiny boards used in everything from phones and laptops to life-saving medical devices and the vast server networks that power American industry. And if China invades, experts say, the U.S. or Taiwan is likely to destroy those factories, which would spell economic disaster for much of the world. Or if China manages to capture the factories and keep them operational, it would leap ahead in the world's most important technologies. Alperovich says that would harm American prosperity and security. But so would a war with China.
In the first year of that war, global depression right off the bat.
And that assumes it doesn't go nuclear.
That's right.
Intelligence agencies and military leaders have been warning for years that China is working on plans to seize Taiwan by force. The admiral in charge of U.S. Pacific Command told Congress in March that, quote, all indications point to the People's Liberation Army meeting Xi Jinping's alleged goal of potentially invading Taiwan by 2027.
We haven't faced a threat like this since World War II.
China has spent the last 2 decades modernizing its military to be able to destroy American ships in the Pacific.
You're going to lose ships. You're going to lose a lot of sailors. You're going to lose thousands, potentially even tens of thousands of American troops.
Alperovich says the U.S. must make containing China the focus of its foreign policy.
The United States has to make it clear to them that the cost of this conflict are going to be too huge for the Chinese economy.
He says that means ending U.S. reliance on China for things like critical minerals and solar panels. And it means arming Taiwan in a way that would make an invasion much more painful than it would be today. All to influence the calculations of the Chinese president.
We want him to wake up every single day and look at himself in the mirror as he's shaving and say, today is not the day.
Ken Delanian, NBC News.
So China has got a raw mineral supply coming in from Latin America because they're giving them bullshit tractors. Meanwhile, Taiwan creates 70% of the semiconductors for all of our microchips, so say goodbye to your cell phones and your laptops. You know what that's gonna do to global trade? You know what that's gonna do to prices of electronics? You know what that's gonna do to the global market? Now, this aggression must not stand. For real. I know, man, like Manu said, China's full of shit. And that's what everybody says. That's what everybody's been saying for decades. That, oh, it's 5 more years until China can wipe us out. But clearly our State Department thinks that we need to open a dialogue about this recent aggression towards Taiwan. Clearly, they think that there needs to be some sort of a conversation before a hot war breaks open.
This was Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin's first face-to-face meeting with his Chinese counterpart, Defense Minister Dong Jun. High-level talks that China had rejected until recently.
We have always been open to exchanges and cooperation, but this requires both sides to meet each other halfway.
Some differences appeared irreconcilable at this summit, and Chinese officials went on the attack.
Facts showed that the U.S. is the biggest corrupter of the international order.
the biggest obstacle to progress in global governance, and the greatest challenge to regional peace and stability.
In his comments, Austin insisted war is avoidable and dialogue is necessary.
And every conversation is not going to be a happy conversation, but it is important that we continue to talk to each other.
There is much to talk about, including China's military threats against democratic Taiwan. And in the disputed South China Sea, Chinese ships have harassed much smaller Philippine vessels, raising concerns that the U.S.-Philippine Defense Treaty could be triggered.
If a Filipino citizen is killed by a willful act, that is, I think, very, very close to what we define as an act of war. And therefore, we will respond accordingly.
Those hotspots make it even more important for the U.S. and China to keep talking, many regional analysts say.
Wow. Well, what is China saying? What is China saying? Because I know what Biden's saying. It's... Well, China's saying we shouldn't go into war. The US and China shouldn't provoke a war with each other.
I know many of you follow with great interest the China-US military-to-military relationship. Because whether such relationship is stable matters to global security and stability. China's position is consistent and clear. We stay open to exchanges and cooperation with the US military. But this requires efforts from both sides. As we see it, it is because the two militaries have differences that there is a greater need for communication. Even though we have different development paths, we should not pursue confrontation with each other. The Chinese and US militaries should value peace, uphold stability, act in good faith, and find the right way to get along with each other. This will instill more confidence in the world and our region.
Everybody should just get along with each other. Why can't we all just get along, man? That's what China's saying. China just wants peace. China doesn't want to go to war. China just wants peace. And stability. Well, you know what I say.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
Mm-hmm. Because just like those Mexicans, they'll sneak up behind you and yell yeehaw really loud.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
That's why they're working together to sneak up on America and yell yeehaw. Because while they're saying with one hand, we don't want conflict, they're saying with the other hand, anyone who dares separate Taiwan from China will end up in self-destruction. Don't trust them.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
我们不允许霸权主义、强权政治损害亚太，不允许把地缘冲突、冷战、热战引入亚太，不允许任何国家、任何势力在这里生战生乱。外部干涉势力正在以切香肠的方式不断的虚化、掏空一个中国原则，炮制涉台法案，执意对台售武，非法进行官方往来， 这实际上就是在助长台独，图谋移台制华。这些险恶用心正在把台湾引向险境。中方对侵权挑衅行政保持了足够的克制，
Great restraint.
但
China
这
has
也
exercised
是有
great
限的。
restraint.
希望个别国家认清利害关系，回归对话协商的正道。两军之间正因为有分歧，所以才要多交流。即使道不同，也不能搞对抗。关键是要坚持以和为贵，以稳为重，以信为本，找到两军正确的相处之道，为世界和地区和平提供更多的正面预期。
So, Ching Chong Bing Bong, don't you dare separate China from Taiwan. Ching Chong a Bing a Bong. Well, guys, I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight. A lot of crazy things. We've seen a lot of crazy things. We've seen fake pandas, fake tractors, fake China, who's so poor. They're so poor that they're eating rocks. So poor that they're literally eating rocks.
哎，老板你好。哎，你好。来一份这个爆炒鹅卵石。好的。怎么卖的呢？16一份，醋一半，辣椒一半，石头香又香啊。这个是哪里的特色呀？这是湖北的特色。那我吃完这石头还要还给你不？不用了，可以带回去做纪念。一时传三代，人走时还在啊，回去可以继续做啊。好好。
You're right, Trippy. It does look like fish tank pebbles.
哎，老板你好。哎，你好。来一份这个。
They're so poor in China. They're just eating aquarium pebbles. Aquarium pebbles with oil and chili and spices. But you know, you add a little garlic. Wow. Weird. China's a weird place, guys. And what I'm trying to say is
don't trust China. China is asshole.
Don't trust them. Guys, thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed this stream. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. We've covered a lot of ground in our fake Chinese electric tractors. Let that be an image forever burned into your brain whenever the CCP and the PRC and all of the commies, whenever they tell you anything, let that tractor be the image that you think of. If they're lying to you about self-driving autonomous tractors, they're lying to you about dogs having their heads cut off, everything. They're lying to you about Yuri Gagarin going into space. It's all a bunch of bullshit. And as we say around here, guys, in the pursuit of truth, trust no one. I hope you guys have enjoyed the stream tonight. Thank you for the new subscribers. Thank you to TrippyCast for having me on tonight. We usually do this thing, kind of when I feel like it, but usually on Friday nights. Typically, about every other week or so. So subscribe, ring that bell, do those things. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hanging out, listening to me rant about tractors. I know. Crazy spirit and his crazy conspiracy theories about Chinese Mexican tractor paramilitaries. But I'm telling you, there's something there. There's something there, and I hope more people look into this tractor thing. This agrarian reform going on with this El Presidente. Is it El Presidente? I don't know Spanish. She's female. Is like, do I have to change it? Because like that's the problem with all of those Spanishy Latin languages. Like they have male and female pronouns for everything. It's weird. It's weird.
Weird.
But you know who's not weird? You guys. Thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back when I'm back. Can't tell you when, but I'll see you then. And until then, guys, in the pursuit of truth, trust no one. Good night. And let me turn this screen cap back on. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Mechanization.